Because I had it rough, I adore it when individuals get what they deserve. Just about a week ago, this occurred with Kevin, my ex-husband, a 38-year-old male. Kevin is a classic narcissist who does an excellent job of masking his flaws. Accordingly, I gave in to its charms. It's been 14 years since I met him when I was 36 years old. When I first started working, we were on the same team, and he served as a mentor to me. He was there for me anytime I needed help and showed me the ropes of the job. Even though he was flirting with me at work, he never actually tried to hit on me. Throughout our entire relationship, he never once did anything that gave me the creeps, including being indecent or making sexual approaches. He changed employment around 2 years later, when we were both 24 years old. He had wanted to date me and really liked me on his last day of work, so he took me aside to tell me. Because he was afraid of upsetting us at work, he kept silent. I was more shocked by his candor than I was by my liking him. Because I knew he was a decent man from the start, I agreed. After a brief courtship, we decided to take our relationship to the next level and became an official couple. We went through life side by side, but he dumped me for his secretary, Emma, last year. He seemed to transform into an entirely different individual. His behavior and the sudden deterioration of the situation led me to believe that he was experiencing a strange midlife crisis. It was as if he had transformed into someone entirely new. I couldn't believe he would squander 11 years of our relationship. During the first few weeks following his announcement that he wanted a divorce, I failed to understand the rationale behind his decision. However, I have been attending therapy sessions since the divorce, and it was during these sessions that I discovered the biggest gaslighter and a hole lurking beneath that seemingly good person appearance. He would take your confidence, sanity, and friendships away from you before delivering the crushing blow of your life. You transform into a mere shadow of your previous self without even realizing it because everything happens so subtly. I experienced the same thing. At first, I didn't see any red flags from him, but over time, his real colors came out. After dating for 3 years, Kevin and I tied the knot. We were both 27 years old. We were both employed, and I had never once spoken to him or even hinted that I would prefer to remain at home and not go to work. I simply did not enjoy that. I never in a million years thought that I would be able to retire from my career. I had worked so hard to get here. My husband and I were married for a little over a year when I lost my job due to a management shakeup at my employer. Because it had taken me by surprise, I was absolutely crushed. I was shocked they fired me because I was the firm's best performer. I applied for a lot of jobs, but nobody ever got back to me. The ones that did pay me were grossly inadequate. I reached out to Kevin for some application assistance and referrals. Despite his promises, he never followed through. The fact that he was evasive about every detail should have been my first red flag. Unfortunately, I had too much faith in and an affection for him to fathom that he would pull this stunt. Unexpectedly, I became pregnant throughout the entire process of looking for a job. My husband and I had always taken extra precautions, and I was even using birth control, so this was really out of the ordinary. Kevin advised me to put my job search on hold for the time being because we were expecting a child. About 7 or 8 weeks into my pregnancy, right after my doctor's checkup, this happened. My profession would continue unabated, and the baby still had a ways to go, I assured him. He lied and claimed he agreed with me, but he really thought the stress from work and the kid would be bad for me. He emphasized that I should proceed step by step right now. I was persuaded by his pleasant and reasonable demeanor toward the matter. I shouldn't worry about money. He assured me he was making enough to support us both. That made me feel much better, so I stopped looking for a job, exactly what he had hoped for. To this day, I still have no idea why I ever stopped applying for jobs when I felt better. He advised me to hold off until I was at least 4 months along in my pregnancy when I brought up the matter again. Hell ensued throughout my second trimester. Almost every day, I would puke up due to the continual pain I was in. I miscarried a month later, so it was a complete disaster from start to finish. It was the lowest point in my life, and I would never want anyone else to have to go through what I went through. I should have felt more supported throughout it all. I went through a rough patch emotionally and mentally for a few months before I started to feel better and more like myself again. Kevin was strongly opposed to my decision to resume my job search when I told him I wanted to do it. While he remained silent, his demeanor was devoid of enthusiasm. He made a subtle implication that I had been unemployed for too long, making it difficult for me to find work and justify the gap. Eventually, I stopped seeking for jobs and stopped believing in myself because of how disappointed I felt. He reassured me that I shouldn't be worried about the future because he was concerned about our ability to start a family and our finances. Because I believed him and because I thought I would never fit in at work again, I devoted my energy to my family and the house. This was precisely his desire. Subtly but surely, he had altered my identity, chipped away at my self-confidence, and ultimately rendered me absolutely helpless. It was so subtle that I failed to notice, and I am not solely attributing it to him. I should have used my brain more wisely. That much is certain. However, you start to accept their story when the one person you trust the most attempts to bring you down. And that is the outcome. We were able to conceive again 6 years ago because I prioritized my family. This time around, I was both elated and cautious. Looking back on my past experiences was too painful. Our son, Jerry, was born to us 5 years ago. Kevin gushed over Jerry, but our relationship deteriorated. What I took as a sign that we weren't able to spend enough time together was that we were both juggling new commitments. It wouldn't be enough to cause the marriage to fail. After our multiple discussions, I assumed everything was good. A few bumps on the road occurred, but that's about it. When I discovered that Kevin had been unfaithful to me about 18 months ago, my world came tumbling down. Little was left to the imagination once I discovered images and chats on his phone. I behaved rashly and slammed his thumb in his face rather than being strategic and plotting my escape. Without delay, things began to deteriorate. There were a lot of ways he attempted to defend himself. He first claimed there was no big deal. He went on to say that all males do it. Lastly, he claimed that he had to go for companionship elsewhere because I was ignoring him. He followed the classic pattern of an abuser. First, he denies the incident occurred. Second, he downplays its significance. Third, he avoids taking responsibility. And finally, he accuses the victim of being overly sensitive. I proceeded with the divorce since it was really important to me. Kevin was taken aback since he never expected me to abandon him completely. Since we were financially dependent on each other and had a child together, he probably thought I would stay and try to make amends. Because of all these things, I'll admit that I considered forgiving him. Nonetheless, common reason won out, and I saw I couldn't handle such insensitivity. He would simply repeat the same mistakes if given another opportunity, something I was well aware of. It's not in his character to feel bad about himself and try to make amends. He's the type to see how far someone can push themselves before giving up, and he keeps going until they give up. No matter how ill this makes him feel, I was never going to give in to his demands. I had to engage his family since he fought the divorce. Even he was taken aback by how much support I received from them throughout the divorce. They are still not speaking since his father disowned him. I am incredibly fortunate that my in-laws' parents are very involved in Jerry's and my lives. None of them once mentioned that I should attempt reconciling with him. They made their support crystal apparent and never wavered. No one ever once urged me to maintain peace, and they assured me that they would be there for me and their grandson no matter what. My sister-in-law, Simone, and I had a rocky relationship to begin with, but she was there for me through the divorce and has been nothing but supportive ever since. To Kevin's surprise, members of his own family have betrayed him and are now siding with me. It was already too late when he recognized what he was losing. I now have complete custody of Jerry and live with him. Kevin is permitted to visit, which is fine with me. I feel unsafe letting my son be around his new girlfriend, who is, in my opinion, quite young. I don't want my son involved with such a toxic relationship, especially since she's only 22 and Kevin is 38. Only recently did everything reach a boiling point. A birthday bash for Jerry was hosted by me. My in-laws, including my father-in-law, sister-in-law, mother-in-law, and the sister of my father-in-law, who had recently lost her husband, were among his acquaintances and close relatives who were invited. I had also extended an invitation to Kevin, but I had explicitly stated that it was for him alone and that he was not allowed to bring anybody else. I was hoping he would respect my preferences because I didn't want the girlfriend, Lilith. However, I was completely mistaken. His girlfriend and him were tardy by an hour when he strolled in. Jerry was very distraught. I felt bad for him because he had given up hope of Kevin showing up by that moment. It was crystal clear as Kevin walked in what his true intention was. The purpose of his visit was to make their relationship public, not to see his son. Lilith looked like she was heading to a nightclub in her wildly unsuitable attire for a children's party. In that same moment, I considered slapping her, but I restrained myself so as not to spoil Jerry's birthday. In his enraged state, my father-in-law wanted to know if I wanted him to expel them. I warned him not to make a big deal. He excused himself, spoke to Kevin alone, and I'm sure he was very critical of him. Unfortunately, it was too late. There were other relatives and friends present, and they were all staring pityingly at me. I despised that sensation. I should have cried and bolted to my room, but I restrained myself since I understood that this was precisely Kevin's plan all along. The point of all this drama was to drive a wedge between us, nothing more. Furthermore, I would never, ever allow him to win. Anyone with a working central nervous system might feel the party's mood quickly turn negative. My ex-husband, though, was reportedly not a part of that. Strolling around as if nothing was out of the ordinary, he attempted to initiate discussions with passers-by. The fact that nobody made an effort to be nice or respectful to him was the most reassuring thing to me. They made no effort to show that they liked him. He didn't plan ahead nearly as much as he probably wished for this little stunt to emotionally hurt me. He was the target of everyone's wrath or revulsion, or they were avoiding him like the plague. Even his own family was part of it. Lilith, on the other hand, was holding on to Kevin as if her own survival depended on it, and I doubt anyone else talked to her but me. She wasn't as naive as I had assumed. She was starting to grasp how embarrassing it was. Despite her best efforts, most people either disregarded her or spoke over her. It touched my heart to feel this little bit of encouragement from individuals who were only casual acquaintances. It was comforting to know that my community would not stand for such treatment. Kevin did something incredibly cruel since things were becoming uncomfortable, and he wasn't seeing the results he wanted. Despite the fact that I was in earshot, he'd had the gall to boast to another parent about how much he loved being with a successful lady instead of a housewife like me. Because my silence irritated him, he insisted on bringing up the subject. He felt fortunate that Lilith selected him since she was so full of possibility, and being with her was so different from being with me, he continued. Well, someone slapped him before he could finish speaking. Simone was there when I turned around. Even her own brother was slapped in front of everyone by her. Some parents took their children and departed, and the room was dead silent. Jerry seemed all right when I hurried over to check on him a few minutes later. Good thing he wasn't watching when his beloved aunt slapped his dad. He was preoccupied with my mother-in-law. Kevin and Simone were arguing, but I couldn't understand a word they said. Simone was in fits of laughter as I walked over, and Kevin and Lilith were absolutely mortified. What Simone said to provoke such a response was completely beyond my comprehension. I could tell it was serious since the couple had gone from cocky to blushing with shame. They departed in no time at all. The fact that Kevin was too preoccupied with his own thoughts to even bid Jerry farewell saddened me. My mother-in-law and father-in-law saved the day by coming up with a tale to explain it to Jerry, so I didn't have to worry about it. Since I was too busy to pay attention during the most exciting part of the play, I had to ask my mother-in-law what had transpired after everything had settled down. She vented her frustrations to me about how weary she was of Kevin treating me like second-class citizen while praising his girlfriend. Her admission that she was aware Kevin had persuaded me to remain at home only served to heighten my annoyance with his remarks. She made an effort to remain silent, but she felt compelled to intervene in order to prevent them from grinning. She then made the decision to continue their pattern of attacking below the belt. After that, she grinned and informed me that she had knowledge about Lilith that not even Kevin had. Similar to how they attempted to shame me a few months back, she utilized the information to make them look foolish at the celebration. Seeing Lilith by herself was something Simone noticed while out shopping with a buddy. Lilith was aware of Simone's presence, but chose not to approach her because of their strained relationship. Half an hour later, Simone overheard Lilith and the store manager having an argument. Lilith appeared distraught. What startled Simone was what she learned after she intervened. Attempts by Lilith to steal cosmetics valued at hundreds of dollars were discovered during a shoplifting incident. The supervisor was about to contact the authorities in a fit of wrath. Simone stepped in to help Lilith, even though she was unsure of what had possessed her. Even though she didn't want me to get furious, she went ahead and bought the de-escalation items nevertheless. While they were out for coffee, Lilith confessed in her that she had always had a hard time controlling her impulses to steal from stores. She began when she was a child, and although she managed to keep it under control for a while, she relapsed and now finds it much more difficult to resist the temptations. Without Simone's assistance, Lilith's situation would have been catastrophic. According to Simone, she hadn't seen Lilith after that, and that was their final conversation. However, she felt compelled to take action when witnessing her behaving like a spoiled child during the party. According to Simone, she gave Lilith an opportunity to be quiet and not so annoying by trying to remain silent for a bit while staring at her directly. Since she had no desire to descend to such a level. After a while of fruitless glares, she realized that the only way to get Lilith to stop was to spill the beans. That's the reason for all the hubbub. Probably Lilith never imagined Simone would really spill the beans about her secret. Perhaps Lilith thought that Simone's allegiance was with Kevin and herself, rather than me since she was Kevin's sister. This woman was completely mistaken. Why she thought Simone and I weren't close is a mystery to me. Perhaps she was only guessing, or perhaps Kevin exaggerated the strength of his bond with Simone. For whatever reason, Lilith's cunning behavior had unintended consequences. Because, as Simone claims, her statement elicited guests from all guests at the party. I rushed over to see what was going on when Simone exposed her, which caught Kevin off guard. It may make me a horrible person, but I'm actually glad it happened since Lilith truly deserved it, even though it exposed her dirty laundry and humiliated her. I say this not because she abducted my spouse, but because Kevin is largely to blame for our relationship's demise. But Lilith remains a jackass since she cheated on her husband and now feels superior about it. Perhaps Kevin is a prize in her eyes, but her ethics are seriously flawed. I don't feel sorry for her because of that. Actually, I find it quite amusing that she was publicly shamed, and I am incredibly grateful to Simone for defending me. For Jerry's sake, I would have kept my mouth shut and avoided conflict if I could have. Having someone who will always be there for you no matter what is a wonderful feeling. In spite of the fact that I did lose a husband in the last year, which was a blessing in hindsight, I have made a lifelong friend, and that is priceless. My last update was a few days ago, and a lot has transpired since then. During the initial 4 or 5 days following Jerry's party and the entire disaster, Lilith and Kevin were completely silent. I was really taken aback when they reached out to me. After all, I wasn't present when Simone revealed Lilith. I was under the impression that they would contact Simone and bother her at most. Since Simone remained silent, I took it as a sign that the drama had ended. Kevin wasn't communicating with Jerry either, so I had to keep explaining why he left so suddenly. Jerry persisted in inquiring about it. I failed to comprehend how the enormity of his shame caused him to lose sight of his role as a parent and his responsibility to his son, whom he cherished more than anything else a year ago. I was beginning to feel a growing sense of bitterness when Kevin sent me a text. It was 2 a.m. on a Saturday, and I could tell he was intoxicated just by looking at his typing. Well, the messages were completely off-kilter. At first, it seemed like he was just trying to reconnect with a long-lost acquaintance. Given how casual it was, I wondered whether he had intended to send it to someone else. Following this, he bombarded me with texts apologizing for his betrayal, describing his infidelity as the worst mistake of his life, and expressing his profound longing for my presence and that of my family. Every day, it shattered his heart. It continued till 5 a.m. I was at a loss for words, so I remained silent. Truthfully, his voice message that he sent me at 5:30 in the morning seemed sincere. While it brought a small tear to my eye, I am well aware that I should not believe him. I would never contemplate reuniting with him because my life has been so much better since he departed. His sincerity, though, brought up a flood of memories and melancholy. He admitted in the voice memo that he had never imagined I would truly file for a divorce. He claimed his affair with Lilith had been pointless and had lasted too long. He said he had intended to break it off, but never followed through. He was still holding out hope that we could get past our differences when I met up with him. Because he knew I wouldn't abandon the whole family in an instant, he felt more safe after we had a boy. He had anticipated my forgiveness and mistook my impulsive reaction for my willingness to forgive him. For that reason, he pretended. It was already too late when he realized I was serious about getting a divorce. As far as he was concerned, I would never leave him, he claimed. It would have been better for him to do nothing at all if he had anticipated this outcome. Since then, he has stopped texting, and I have been at a loss for words as to how to reply. Almost soothing, it's a strange sensation. His bluster was all an act. The death of his family has touched him deeply, I can see now. Even though I now know he didn't want this, it still makes me sad that this is where we ended up. You were mostly correct in criticizing me, and I've read all of the comments. Update too. It would have been disastrous for me if I had reverted to my old habits. Therefore, I appreciate all the critical feedback. Following his voicemail, I ought to have been enraged. His statement did not reflect remorse or an acknowledgement of wrongdoing. It was merely an admission that I stood up for myself, and that is why we are here. It was his hope that I would do nothing to stop him. For a split second, I lost all rational faculties due to nostalgia, but now I realize my ex-husband is a complete and utter scoundrel. I apologize to those who thought I would convey this message to Lilith in an effort to stop their relationship, but I did not do so. I refuse to get my hands dirty with their chaos. I would be foolish to rush back into it after spending so much time and energy escaping from it. I have heard rumors that Lilith and Kevin are ending their relationship. She had been his secretary, but her dismissal is due to management's discovery of her history of theft. She has become unfit for Kevin's reputation, and this is just too much for him to bear. So it seems like they're splitting up or have already done so. It makes no difference to me. Even more frustrating is the fact that he hasn't even attempted to get in touch with Jerry once, let alone made the trip to see him. The problem is that I can't make him have a family. My in-laws' parents have been unresponsive to his efforts to mend fences with them. I still have their support, and words fail me to describe how grateful I am. After declaring she could no longer tolerate his inanity, Simone severed all communication with him. She has my whole and utter sympathy. The complete reversal of fortunes is amusing. Kevin intended to isolate me and break me down, but now he's the one without a partner or family. This shouldn't bring me comfort, yet it does. I find solace in knowing that he is experiencing the same tragedy that he had wished upon me. Wow, I'm at a loss for words if this isn't poetic justice. Oh, how fortunate that Simone exposed Lilith and that I mustered the courage to leave him. It will be quite some time before he musters up the will to be arrogant about anything again. She removed the